Hey everyone, welcome to Seneca Lake Mysteries, the podcast where we explore the unusual, strange, and unexplained on New York's largest Finger Lake. Thanks so much for listening. Before I get to my guest and the on-location episode I recorded for this time around, I first want to talk about, last episode I did a segment on companies in the Seneca Lake area who produce wines, ciders, beers, and spirits that celebrate the mysteries of Seneca Lake. So quickly this time I want to give another shout out to a local group that also acknowledges one of the Seneca Lake mysteries in a big way. It's a box lacrosse team that plays in the North American Box Lacrosse League, the NABLL. And for those who don't know, box lacrosse is the indoor version of field lacrosse, played in hockey rinks and similar smaller venues. The NABLL is a semi-pro league, meaning that many of the players are paid little, if at all. There's currently 40 teams across the country in 10 different regions with 3 to 5 teams per region. And the way it works, they play the regular season in the summer, and then the champions of each region travel to one location for the playoffs, and they crown the league champion. And the teams are really powered and funded by local businesses and communities with a strong emphasis on growing the sport of box lacrosse. So there's a real kind of DIY spirit that I love, and you get to see some really talented players on these teams from college age on up. So back in the summer of 2024, a new NABLL team began playing in Geneva at the Geneva Rec Center, and that team is called the Seneca Lake Serpents. And of course, there's a few reasons why I love this. Number one, sports teams are usually thought to play for their communities. So the Boston Red Sox are representing the Boston community, the Chicago Bears play for the people of Chicago, etc. So I guess this means that the Seneca Lake Serpents are playing for the people of Seneca Lake. And that's got to be pretty rare for a team to name their home as a landscape feature. So the Serpents are Seneca Lake's team. And second reason, obviously the name. It's so cool to see the Seneca Lake Monster / Seneca Lake Serpent legend being acknowledged and celebrated. And of course, finally, the game of lacrosse is known as the medicine game by Native people. It's the belief that lacrosse is more than just a sport. It's a sacred practice that is healing and holds deep spiritual importance. And it's seen as a gift from the Creator used to restore balance and well-being in the individuals and communities that play. So the 2025 season for the Serpents begins on June 14th, Saturday, with a 5 p.m. home game at the Geneva Rec Center at 666 Exchange Street in Geneva versus another team with a cryptid-related name, the Utica Yeti. So if you want to see an exciting, hard-hitting, fast-paced sport played by guys who truly love the game, then get yourself over to the Rec Center for the game. And I'll put a link in the description to the Seneca Lake Serpents Instagram, which is at Seneca Lake Serpents LC. So I am very excited for this episode. For this time around, I met up with Seriah Azkath, who's the host of the Where Did the Road Go podcast, and also the Last Exit for the Lost Underground Music podcast. And we met up at the cemetery for the former Willard State Hospital, aka the Willard Asylum. So I was a guest on Seriah's podcast recently, which we recorded at the foot of the hill below the cemetery. So this time, for the first episode that I'm going to do about Willard, we met up the hill in the cemetery on a beautiful, sunny June evening. Now, Willard Cemetery is an unusual place, and Seriah has a lot to tell us about it because as a teenager growing up in the area, he and his friends spent hours and hours hanging around there. And as a fellow upstate New Yorker who grew up in a rural area, I can definitely relate to being a teen and finding a somewhat hidden or rarely visited spot to while away the hours away from the grown-ups while being a kid. And with Seriah's many hours spent in the Willard Cemetery come a whole slew of incredible high strangeness experiences that he was happy to share with me and all of you as we sat in the corner of the cemetery. We ended up speaking for a long time, so much time that I separated the interview into 2 parts, which are close to an hour each. So this is only part 1. Part 2 will be in the next episode. I also want to tell a little story of what happened when I arrived there. So I pulled up to the parking area at the bottom of the hill next to the cemetery, and there was a large pickup truck there with a flatbed behind it. It looked like it was a landscaping company. So as soon as I pulled up, I started thinking, are they mowing this cemetery up here? Got out of my car, and off in the distance, I could hear the sound of a mower. And I thought to myself, this is just perfect. The one day that we picked to visit this cemetery is the day that they're mowing this big 15-acre cemetery. I wasn't sure if we were going to be able to do the podcast. I wasn't sure how far along he was with the mowing. So I walked up the hill and took a look, and I saw that there was a guy on the big mower off towards the further end of the cemetery, and it looked like he was almost completed with the whole place. So I figured, well, he should be finishing up soon. I got there a little early. I was meeting Seriah at 6. I got there around 5:30. So I grabbed the equipment, a couple of chairs, and set up a spot to record the podcast. Now, right after I finished setting up, the lawnmower started coming toward me. The guy driving it was coming over to see what I was doing. I wasn't sure why he was coming over. So as he's coming over, he was taking pictures with his phone, and then pulled up next to me and shut off the engine and just started chatting. He was telling me, I asked him how long he was there mowing, and he said that he had started mowing at about 7 o'clock that morning. He asked me if I was a photographer, what I was doing there. I told him, no, we're recording a podcast. And he told me that his wife was really interested in this place, and she was asking him to take pictures while he was here. And he asked me, what do you know about this cemetery? Do you know anything about it? And I said, as a matter of fact, I do. I'm here to do a podcast about it. And I told him about the history of the cemetery. And then we were chatting a little bit more, and he mentioned, it's so hot. I'm so hot right now. I could go jump in that lake. And then he asked me, isn't that lake really deep or something? Do you know anything about the lake? I said, well, as a matter of fact, I do. And I told him how it was, the deepest lake east of the Mississippi, not including the Great Lakes. And then we just started chatting a little bit more. We were just talking about getting older and how fast it goes by, and how in your head you can still feel like it was years ago, and how memories stay with you. And then out of nowhere, he brought up, he said, that there's some kind of physics, like quantum theory or something, that time isn't even real, that it doesn't even exist. He's like, I think I might believe in that. What about you? I said, well, as a matter of fact, I do. I was kind of surprised that this guy came over on the lawnmower, and I wasn't expecting to start talking about whether time is real or not with him. So it was really cool. And then we chatted a little bit more. He told me some stuff about his own personal spiritual beliefs and journey, and I'm not going to get into that stuff here. So he said his name was Randy, and he said he had one small spot to finish mowing. And so he finished up that little bit and said goodnight to me, and he left just a few minutes before Seriah arrived. So Seriah got there, we sat down, we got ready, started recording the podcast. And after about 15 minutes or so, we heard a lawnmower or something coming up the hill, and we turned around. It was actually the pickup truck. He came back up the hill in his truck with the flatbed on it and the mower on the back, and told us that he had dropped his phone while he was speaking with me. And so I ended up, you can hear the edit at the point where I edit the podcast, because we stopped for a few minutes, and Seriah called his phone, helped him find his phone, and then he took off. So it was a really cool and interesting encounter. And So shout out to Randy. I don't know if he's listening to this or not, but I really appreciated our chat. So let's get into it. Seriah is, like I mentioned, he's host of Where Did the Road Go, which is a podcast that deals with the unexplained, fringe subjects, that kind of stuff. It's a great show. And you can find everything you need to know about Seriah at his website for that podcast called wheredidtheroadgo.com. And on that website, there's a link tree so you can find all of his work, his photography, music shows, his YouTube channel, social media, and everything else. So make sure you go and check out everything that Seriah is doing. And remember, this is just the first half of the interview conversation. And make sure you tune in next time. And as always, if you like the show, please subscribe and follow me everywhere. You can find everything at SenecaLakeMysteries.com. Also, you can reach out to me anytime with comments, suggestions, stories, anything else by sending an email to podcast@SenecaLakeMysteries.com or by calling and leaving a voicemail at 607-307-1167. So thanks again for listening. And thanks again to Seriah for an incredible conversation. So let's get to it.
Well, thank you for having me on.
Hey, thanks for being here.
I enjoyed our last talk.
Yeah, me too. And
the weather's nicer today.
Oh, it's perfect. I think tomorrow's supposed to be a scorcher, so I'm glad we got this one in today. And when I arrived here, there was a guy mowing this place.
Yeah.
And to mow this place, like he was here from 7 a.m, and now it's after 6 o'clock at night. But it was perfect timing because when I came up, I heard the mower. I'm like, oh no. Like
I was worried about something like that.
Yeah. But the mowing got done. I got to talk to Randy, the mower. If you're listening, Randy, thanks for stopping and talking to me. So let's get into it. I haven't done an episode yet. Well, actually, let's get into this first. Seriah.
Yeah.
You're the host of Last Exit for the Lost.
The Last Exit for the Lost. For today, as of today, 31 years.
31 years. Yeah. Yes. And just tell people a little bit about that show.
That is an underground music show. So it's mostly heavier stuff, but it's not only metal, it's punk, it's hardcore, it's industrial, it's gothic stuff, but it's stuff you're not going to hear anywhere else.
Okay.
So we generally move away from the big name bands and try to focus on the stuff that's smaller, local bands, things like that, and obscure old stuff that you may not have heard.
Yep.
And then, so we do live performances of bands. We have a performance space. We do a lot.
Yeah.
TheLastExit.org is the website if anyone wants to check it out. Shows are archived sporadically all the way back to 1996.
Wow. Yeah, so you've been at that for a while.
Yeah.
You're a bit of a institution here in the Finger Lakes area. And I loved the idea that it's just a passion of yours that you put all this energy and all this love into, and I'm sure you've helped so many bands and turned people on to so much good music.
I hope so.
And that's awesome. And then at some point you started doing your second show.
Where Did the Road Go?
Where Did the Road Go?
That was January 26, 2013.
2013.
I had heard I was starting to listen to other podcasts. I generally, the story I basically put in a nutshell, I didn't like talk radio. I didn't like talk radio because my dad listened to Rush Limbaugh nonstop.
Yeah.
And it drove me crazy. Graham Hancock had posted that he was going to be on Coast to Coast, and I'm like, oh, I kind of want to hear Graham Hancock. And I figured I wouldn't listen to all of it because I don't like talk radio, but then I listened to all of it, and I was like, that was great.
Yeah.
What else is out there? And so I started looking for shows he was on, and then I started looking for other people I was interested in, like Robert Schock and stuff. And at some point, someone was interviewing Jesse Ventura. Oh, and Robert Schock. Same person interviewed Robert Schock. Didn't know anything about them.
Uh-huh.
Wasn't paying attention to the stuff Jesse Ventura was saying. And I said, why does this person get to talk to these people?
Right.
Like, I want to talk to these people, and I know their stuff,
Yeah.
And so I didn't think of it as a podcast. I just I'm like, I have we have an hour free on WVBR. Maybe they'll let me have it. And initially they didn't respond. I went, okay.
Right.
And then I talked to someone and went, oh, no, the program director never responds. Hit him again. And I hit him again. He's like, I love this idea. I'm sorry. I thought I got back to you. And then, I mean, it's more of a podcast now than a radio show. The radio show's kind of secondary. Most people listen to the podcast because why wouldn't you?
Right.
But in 2013, not everyone was listening to podcasts.
Oh, yeah.
So.
Yeah, for sure. Yep. And when it comes to talk radio, it turns out that it all depends on who's talking.
Exactly.
Cool. So let's get into the Willard Asylum a little bit. I've got some notes here. I haven't covered Willard yet on my podcast, and I consider Willard, if I had a Seneca Lake Mysteries Mount Rushmore, Willard would be one of those faces on Mount Rushmore. I would probably have Seneca Drums, Seneca Lake Monster, Willard, and maybe the White Deer.
Okay.
Not because they're not necessarily, paranormal, but they're just so unusual and so offbeat. So yeah, the Willard Asylum opened in 1869. It was first called the Willard Asylum for the Chronic Insane, and then in 1890 it was renamed the Willard State Hospital, and it stayed open until 1995. In 1974 it was renamed the Willard Psychiatric Center.
Right.
So the names have changed over the years. And originally it was named after Dr. Sylvester D. Willard, who was a doctor from Albany that was well known for his compassion and his moral compass, and he wanted to give mentally ill people and disabled people a dignified life. So that was the spirit behind Willard. Now, of course, it's all relative when you're talking about these types of facilities from back in the day. But it was
one of the better ones.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was one of the better ones. So by 1855, it was basically, or 1885, so within the first 10, 15 years, it was turned into basically a self-sufficient small town. Had housing for residents and employees, kitchens, livestock, gardens, a slaughterhouse, a rail yard, pretty much everything a small town would need. And in 1931, they built a hospital on the site, which had surgical rooms, all hospital services, dental, and that stayed as a working hospital until the early 80s. And so when Willard was open, if you talk to a lot of the people who worked there in the later years, they don't seem to remember many bad things happening to people.
No. I actually interviewed a woman who was a nurse here for decades.
Oh, yeah?
I haven't put it up yet. I did it like a year or two ago.
Okay.
But I haven't had time to edit because we went through the museum with her because she was leaving the area, and she was probably like 80.
Oh.
And she told me a bunch of stories, and then we drove around, and she, pointed to different buildings and explained what they were for and stuff like that. So eventually that'll be up on the Where Did the Road Go site. No paranormal stuff. It was just like a history of the psychiatric center.
Right. There's a museum here?
Yes, a very small one.
Okay. I think I've heard about that. Is it open to the public or?
I think so, but I don't know when. Because
Yeah.
they called me and asked, one of my neighbors is a part of that group. And she's like, would you come interview this woman before she leaves? And I'm like, well, yes.
Oh, cool. Yeah. Yeah, so we'll be looking for that interview whenever that pops up.
Maybe that'll put a little fire under me to get that done.
Right. But for some of the other reports that came from Willard when it was open, there was allegations of slave labor. There was, abuse, neglect. And as far as the types of so-called therapies they used. A lot of it was kind of progressive occupational therapy, and like, they had, a theater and a bowling alley, and they wanted their residents to have a social life to some extent, and to have jobs and to have a meaningful life. But at the same time, some of the other methods they used were thyroid extractions. They used arsenic to treat mental illnesses caused by syphilis, insulin shock treatment. They used a drug starting in the 50s. They started using a drug called metrazole, which is essentially a drug that induces more or less the same response as electroshock treatment.
Right.
Which is what they also did here.
Yeah.
So it had it may not have been at the same level of nightmare factory as a lot of the other.
But compared to today.
Similar. Compared to today. Sure. And compared to even, the places that were around at the same time. But when it closed in 1995, there were only 135 patients left. Over the course of... Were you going to say something?
Yeah, there was some of the patients were able to just leave. And there was one guy, and I think his name was Warren, if I remember right. And he would hang out down at there was a little store down here, and he'd hang out there. And he'd talk to us every time we went down there. He was probably in his 70s. Mm-hmm. And he told us the craziest stories.
Oh, yeah.
No idea if any of them were true. They were just off the wall type of stuff, but he was such a blast to talk to, and he was such a nice guy.
Yeah. Yeah, that reminds me, I talked to a woman who, she grew up in the area in between, kind of between the depot and Willard.
Okay.
The Seneca Army Depot, which is north of Willard. And she grew up, she was a little girl in the 60s, and she initially called to tell me stories about UFOs that she was seeing at that time. Mm-hmm. And they were pretty common, according to her, when she was young. But she also mentioned that when she was little, especially at nighttime, it would feel extra weird or creepy to a lot of the kids that lived in the area, partially because of the UFOs, but also because everybody was worried that someone was going to escape from the mental hospital.
Oh, yeah.
And occasionally it did happen, where someone would escape and approach a house or something like that. So I thought that was a real interesting, way to grow up is to always have this in the back of your mind, thinking that some disturbed person is going to jump out of the trees.
And I think that concern got worse when they put the prison here.
Oh, yeah.
Because people are like, what if someone gets out?
Yep.
And I don't think that anyone got out. I know one guy wandered away, and he was on cleaning detail.
Yes.
And it's like he just wandered off, and it's like, and he only had 2 weeks left or something like that, and then he was thrown back in for however long for wandering off.
Oh, yeah. I remember that. That wasn't that long ago.
No,
Probably in the last 10 years.
Two.
Yeah.
But we got all this. They called all the houses, giving alerts. So it's like, and it didn't sound like he was particularly dangerous.
Right. Yeah, because the Willard campus was drug rehabilitation, but it was like
a prison.
Yeah, but a prison. So it was an alternative to a regular prison, quote unquote.
Yeah.
So people could get sent there. But there's also, there's 5 Points, which is the maximum security prison, which is not far away as well. Interesting that we're talking about this at this time, because right now the state and the county are taking, what do you call them? Proposals for how to develop the old Willard campus.
Yes, I just saw that the other day. It's about damn time.
Yeah. My first thought is save at least a building or two for ghost hunting, because I really think somebody could make a buck off of that. There are plenty of stories from inside Willard. I guess a lot of the...
It's the lawnmower.
Oh, we got another lawnmower coming up here. What's that? Okay, so I had to stop and take a break there for a second. The mower guy came up. He had lost his phone when he was up here chatting with me. So Seriah called his phone for him. Eventually, he found it over here in
one
the weeds.
piece, luckily.
Yeah, in one piece.
He was worried he'd mowed it.
Yeah. Man, that guy had a long day, and then to lose your phone right at the end of the day, he looked like he was pretty stressed out. So I'm glad you found it. So we were talking about the
proposal for Willard.
I don't know what proposals they have. I'm sure some of them are like.
Well, they were talking about like for housing. They were talking a few different things.
Yeah.
I mean, it would be wise to make part of it a museum.
Sure.
And I think that was part of what they're talking about.
Yeah.
The Dick Van Dyke Center is still open over there, I think.
Yeah, it is.
So that's one of the few things on that campus that's still active.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
A lot of the buildings, unfortunately, have almost fallen in on themselves.
Right.
So.
Yeah.
I'm sure those will just be demolished.
Yep, for sure.
At a certain point, it's beyond restoration.
Yeah. But a lot of them are in, they were in use just a couple years ago.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens with that. But I think I did hear something about the county IDA or whatever, like part of their vision for it is to make sure that the history is preserved, that it's not just like, razed to the ground.
Well, they did,
forgotten.
A few years ago, it would have been 2015 maybe, they had opened it up for tours.
Oh, I remember
the response was so immense. For the one day they opened it up for tours that they had to cancel it.
They ended up canceling it?
Because there were too many people. Like the place was mobbed. And they were like, we can't control this. We're going to cancel this. Because I just happened to be on the air during the day that day on VBR because they had like a dealer's choice thing where there was just an open hour. And a friend of mine saw the post that I was on the air. And he's like, hey, because he was from like Syracuse. He's like, hey, we came to do the Willard tour and they just canceled it. Can we come hang out at the radio station? And I'm like, yeah, sure. And so that's how I knew about that, that they were going to open it up and do regular tours, but there were so many people.
Yeah.
They were like, we can't handle this. This is way, because it was, I think, just a free tour.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I did hear about like hundreds of people showed up. They expected, 50 or whatever. And
or 15.
Or 15.
I think they underestimate the lure of a place like this.
Oh yeah, it's the history. It was open for a long time. At one point, it was the largest asylum in the United States, like in the late 1800s. So.
And how many ghost shows have done Willard?
Yeah. Yeah, a number of them have. Plus people who just kind of call them whatever urban explorers or people that just get in there and snoop around. But I do know a guy, I'm trying to get him on the podcast, who said that years ago he did go in there. It's one of the buildings and did an investigation. And he said, we got some stuff and it was pretty impressive. So I don't know. I'll give him another poke to see if I can get him on here. This is, and where we're at now. So there were 50.
Field.
What's that?
It's a Potter's Field.
A Potter's Field. So there were 50,000 people who lived patients at Willard throughout its history, and roughly half of them died while living here, so 25-some thousand. But here at the Willard Cemetery, there are 5,766 former residents buried here. And what makes this cemetery so unique, at least to me the first time I came here, is that not only is it over 5,000 people who died in the hospital whose families didn't claim their bodies. For it could have been that they had no family to claim the body, but also there were eras in this country even not that long ago where when people had someone in their family who was severely disabled in some way. They wanted nothing to do with them, and they out of sight, out of mind. And that's who's buried here.
Yeah.
And what makes it striking to me when I first came here is that there's, aside from the far corner, there's a far corner where there's Civil War veterans, and I did double check on it, Civil War veterans who were Willard patients are buried in the back corner, but that's the only place where there are any tombstones. There's a couple spots that have markers that people have put in more recent years, but there's no. It just looks like a meadow.
When I was coming up here as a teenager, yeah, most of it looked like a meadow, but there were areas that were overgrown with trees. And in there, they had little metal slabs for tombstones.
Yep.
And the Jewish graveyard we're on the edge of right now was like that. And they'd stick up out of the ground not very far. They were steel, and they just have a number on them.
Right.
And that's it.
Yep.
I did find some pictures online of those, and I had one, which I'll tell the story about later. But yeah, when they cleaned it up, they got rid of the slabs, and if you look, you can find circular markers in the ground that have those numbers on them.
Yes.
So that's what they replaced them with. But of course, those are sinking and getting overgrown.
Right.
And the lawnmower guy there said, like, when he's mowing through the field, it's like choppy waters. You're going up and down, up and down. He's like, I assume that's just because there are graves there that have sunken in. Yeah. And I would assume the same.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess at some point in history, I don't know what era it was, probably after it closed, maybe in the late 90s, early 2000s, the people that came here to mow got tired of having to mow around whatever markers were left, so they ended up pulling up a lot of the markers. There's a grove of trees over there.
Yeah, it's the only one that's left.
That you'll see a lot of markers there that are up against the roots, and I think that's where they took a lot of them and just kind of tossed them in a pile there.
There's also, I found online a picture of cement things with markers on them. And the woman said, I forget what corner it was. I think it's the far corner. She said she found it in the woods.
Oh.
Just a bunch of markers on cement pieces, just tossed in a pile.
Yeah. I mean, that's another, it just feels like, the people who passed away and this is their final resting place. And then for the final slap in the face, like whatever little tombstones were here for them, whatever little markers that were there to remember them were just unceremoniously picked up and just dumped in a corner.
In the years since I started coming up here in probably the late 80s, this place has changed dramatically.
Yeah.
So there were, like I said, there were a lot more trees where they had the markers in the trees and they just didn't do anything with them. There used to be a little building for the gravedigger. Even after the gravedigger, I think the gravedigger passed away. What year?
1968.
Okay, yeah. So obviously I wasn't around when he was alive, but they had a building, a cement building, and they just one day demolished it and made it part of the road going up into here.
Wow.
And it's like, why would you do this? It was a perfectly good building,
Yeah. Oh, so did you ever go in there?
No, it was locked.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but it was a small building. It was like a shed.
Yeah.
But it was cement, so it was all, solid. So it's not like it was rotting or anything.
Yeah.
Maybe they did it because they weren't using it anymore, but still, why bother to demolish it? And then rubble it down to make gravel for the road.
Yeah, I don't have an answer for that. I can't think of a reason except you just have it in your mind that this place kind of doesn't matter. Like nobody remembers anyone here. It doesn't, it's
that's
just
changed now, I think.
For sure.
Yeah. And we didn't even know if we were allowed to be up here, honestly.
Yeah.
Because it's like, there were no trespassing signs on the woods. But if you came up here, there would also be no trespassing signs looking out toward the woods.
Oh.
So we were always like, are we allowed to be here? We don't really care, but we're going to be careful about coming up here. There was one day we had walked down and a Willard safety officer passed just as we were walking down the driveway. Oh. And he stopped. And we went, all right, well, we weren't doing anything wrong, so we're just going to keep walking. And then he drove off. Right. I think if we had ran or something, he would have been like, oh.
So were you young enough to have been coming here when the state hospital was open?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, this would have been like 86, 87.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah. I don't know. Were they still burying people here at that time?
I think so. Because I think the wood we made our bench out of was the wood they used to carry one of the coffins.
Oh, man.
Because it was just this really nice wood just laying on the ground
Right.
next to the building over there. And we're like, we could make a bench out of this.
Yeah. Yeah, you mentioned the grave digger. So
Yeah.
I wanted to just quickly go over the story of Lawrence Mocha. And he's, not that, I mean, a lot of it's getting kind of heartbreaking. Like, I feel like I'm talking about a lot of heartbreaking things.
Right.
And we'll get past that a little bit, but that's part of the history here. So there was a man named Lawrence Mocha, and he was born in Austria in 1878. He suffered a head injury from getting hit with a rock when he was 27.
Oh.
Then he became an alcoholic, and between the alcohol and the brain damage,
Yeah.
he ended up and had his first stay in an asylum when he was living in Germany. But every description I can see about why he was put away was because he was singing loudly and excitedly in public, and
How
it
dare
made
he.
people uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So, and I was just thinking, man,
Well, drunk-
I've lost count of the number of guys I've seen in cities who are singing and laughing excitedly, and nobody seems to
There
get
now,
too
yeah.
bothered.
Well, also, when you're drunk, you're more
Sure.
likely to do that.
Yeah. I'm sure I've done that myself. So then Lawrence moved to New York City at age 29, and he started working at Bellevue Hospital in New York City as a window washer. He did okay for about 8 or 9 years, but then when he was 38, he was again singing loudly and excitedly, except now he was telling people that God was speaking to him. So they said, well, that's
Maybe he was.
he might have been. And they said, well, that's enough. So you're no longer working at Bellevue. Now you are a resident of Bellevue.
Yeah.
And at age 40, he was transferred to Willard. And first he was a maintenance guy, and then he started digging graves right here in the cemetery. From what I can gather, he dug I didn't read anything about the grave digging team. Like, he was the guy who dug graves
Yeah, I think it was just him.
by himself.
Yeah.
Starting, it was, I don't know exactly when he started, but it was after he was transferred here at age 40. Then in 1945, he was 67 years old, and he wrote a letter to his doctor asking for his release. Have you heard the letter to the
No.
doctor? Okay, I've got the letter here from Lawrence to his doctor, 1945. Dr. Keel, I hereby, Lawrence Mocha, stop work. Yesterday afternoon, I ask you, doctor, to discharge me from Willard Institution. I am capable to do my living independently. I also want to get money for my work here. I make over 8 years more than 500 graves myself and other heavy work all year round. I asked doctor to prepare my trunk, which I brought here from Central Islip. It is my own. I bought it in Dusseldorf. I am respectfully yours.
Huh.
And
I mean, he sounds sane.
yeah, and I just can't imagine digging graves for 20 years or whatever, 500 graves, and also keep in mind that these were residents of Willard, most likely a lot of people that he knew.
Yeah.
You know, friends and, kind of the only family and community that he had.
Yeah.
And in response, they let him keep digging graves, and he continued digging graves here. This blows my mind, until he was 90 years old.
Wow.
So,
Well,
that,
maybe part of the reason he lived to be 90 is because he was digging graves.
right. Yeah, he must have been
In great shape.
in great shape, but 90.
Yeah.
And then, of course, he was buried here at the cemetery, and by the time he passed away, they said that he dug more than 1,500 graves out of the 5,700 and
Wow.
something people that were here. And then it was around 2015. I know they put the marker in 2015.
Okay.
Some local people. There were people who moved in here in I don't know 2009, 2010ish, I believe. Who saw how much disrepair the cemetery was in, and there were people advocating for like cleaning it up and making it look respectful.
Yeah.
And they installed a marker. So there's a huge stone boulder that's over in the middle of the cemetery, and that's
where the building used to be.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That makes perfect sense.
Yep.
So yeah, there's a stone there, and it commemorates Lawrence Mocha's life, and gives him a little nod for what he gave to this place.
Yeah. But I like how the letter's like, hey, I'm not getting paid for this. I'm doing a lot of work. I want to be on my own. And they say, well, you just keep digging graves.
Yeah.
Like what? Not even, okay, we'll pay you.
Right.
You know, for doing this work.
Yep. And I mean, digging a grave, that's a big hole that a person has to dig. It must have been just all day, all the time. He must have been constantly pushing that shovel. So yeah, much respect to Lawrence Mocha for everything he did here. And I also tip my hat to the people who came in, the Friends of Willard. I don't remember what exactly the name of the group was who cleaned this place up and made it accessible again.
The only place they ever kept up was the Civil War graveyard back in the day. That was the only place that was mowed, had flags all the time. That was the only area of this that was actually kept up.
Yep. Yeah, I would imagine so. It's the only place with tombstones, and also it's a military.
Yeah.
Military cemetery. And right now it looks great. The mower guy that just came up, he said that actually a local person, I can't remember his name, that is the one who takes care of that cemetery now. If you look at the grass over there, it's beautiful. Like there's no weeds or anything around.
Well,
it looks like
it's been taken care of this whole time.
Right.
The rest of the area just went wild.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's big. I can't remember. I don't remember how big this is, but it's
he told me, the mower told me, like 15 acres or something.
15 acres. That sounds about right. Yeah, it can be deceptive. When I've come up here and walked around, I'm like, oh, I'm going to go over there by those trees, see what's over there.
It takes you a while.
20 minutes later, I'm still hiking. Like, holy cow!
It also has a very nice vibe up here.
Yes.
It's very peaceful. It's very, like I said, we'll talk about it, but I've had weird stuff happen up here. But even that weird stuff, I don't really get freaked out by weird stuff, but it was never ominous.
Right. Yep. Yeah, that's the same feeling I get here. I mean, when I think about the meaning of the place and the people that are buried here and stuff, like that's melancholy.
Yes.
But I've never felt, I've never felt uncomfortable here or anything like that. Yeah,
it doesn't feel like other places.
Yeah, I'd agree.
And maybe that's partly the openness and the positioning of it. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Well, it could have to do with something else that we'll get to in a little bit that we talked about on your show that I haven't talked about on mine yet. But as you just mentioned it, you said you've had some strange experiences here?
Yes. I have no idea which ones came in what order.
Okay.
I can go with the most subtle one first. So the most subtle one was, like I said, we built a bench. We built a bench right on the cliff. You couldn't see it from the graveyard because there was enough foliage and stuff that we made it, because we initially just made a trail to the edge of the cliff that was maybe 10 feet.
Mm-hmm.
And we would sit on the edge of the cliff. And we're like, we should build a bench or something. And then suddenly wood was there. And we went, let's use this wood. And we brought some nails and we made this little makeshift bench against the tree that actually is still there, but half of it was hanging over the edge of the cliff.
Mm-hmm.
The bench, what's left of the bench, has been flipped over the top of the cliff. And part of it's sitting on the other side, still in pretty good shape.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I have pictures of it. It's hard to see once it's grown in, but I was up here before everything started growing in, and we were like, oh, if you look at just this angle, you can see the wood.
Yep.
So we built that bench, and we came up here all the time, and because none of us drove, we were all teenagers, and I don't think I got my license till I was 19.
Oh.
That sounds right. But anyway, so there was one day I was just sitting up here on my own waiting for like some friends to get home, or they were having dinner or something, and I was going to go back. And I started whistling the end of Fate's Warning's The Epitaph, which is this just melodic piece he does. And I'd stop, and then I'd hear it back on the wind.
Oh.
And I went, is that my imagination? Like, what's going on here? And then I'd hum it again, and it would whistle back on the wind again. And I'm like, all right, either I'm hallucinating or that's really interesting.
Yeah.
Wow. The tombstone, when they demolished that building, there were tombstones and stuff in it.
Mm-hmm.
So they made it part of the road. One of the tombstones, I think it was number 14. And it's funny because when I was looking around for pictures, I found like number 13 and number 15 pictures of them.
Huh.
And I have 14. And I don't know where it is. I wish I could find it. Yep. But it's just sticking out of the gravel. And you pull it, and it was broken. And I was like, I'm keeping it. It's a cool little tombstone. Yeah. And we stuck it under the bench. Now, first of all, most people, there were a few like kids who would come up here who knew the bench was there. Yep. But where I stuck the tombstone, you couldn't get to it. Like, you had to know it was there to get to it.
Right.
And one day we're sitting up there, I reach under there, and it's gone. I'm like, who took my tombstone? That's weird. And so as we're walking out, we're looking to the right to the cliff, past where the bench is, because you can't get any further along from where we built the bench.
Mm-hmm.
And there's the tombstone. And it's laying on the ground on the edge of the cliff in a cleared out spot with 3 sticks on each side. And I went, I can't. And we walked all the way around it. We're like, you can't get in there. I had to break some branches to get into it. Like, no one could have gone in there and put that there. Right. And I picked it back up. My friend's freaking out. And I'm like, this is mine. Leave it alone. And I went back and put it under the bench. And that's where it stayed until I took it home one day.
And nothing creepy, or there was nothing attached to it or anything unsettling?
It was just, and I don't have any explanation for it. Like, an animal wouldn't do that.
No.
A person couldn't do that because you couldn't get to it.
Right.
So it's like, all right. I wish I had a camera at the time.
Yeah.
Now, if something like that happened, the first thing I would have done is snapped a picture.
Right.
And then done a little video around it to show you can't get in there.
And maybe even a live stream. I mean, everybody's got phones in their, cameras in their pockets now.
Exactly. And then the big one, I mean, there was probably a lot of, there was another little one, that group of trees that's still over there, the one they didn't take out. I was on the far end of it where it borders the woods, and my friend was on the other side. We were just, hiking along, and I got this ominous feeling, like everything went dead quiet, and I felt like something big was watching me. And that's the only time I got spooked up here. I was like, oh, that's unsettling. And I'm like, Dave? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, stay there. And then I walked back around, and when I came back around, all the sound came back.
Oh, wow. You said it felt like something big?
Yeah. It felt like a predator watching you.
Oh, that's a good thing. Yeah. Well, it's not a predator, but there's a little brown deer. Oh, a couple brown deer over there.
Yeah, that's not uncommon.
Spying on us.
But it was that Oz effect quiet, I think, that freaked me out, and just that oppressive, ominous sort of vibe, which I've never felt up here except for that one time.
Any idea why?
Nope. I don't even try to explain this stuff.
Right.
A lot of times I try to see what I could take away from it.
Yeah.
But that was probably just go around and find your friend.
Right.
I mean, I'm sure there are sinister things around that in the right circumstances could hurt you.
Yeah.
I mean, you got plenty of missing people in the woods.
Right.
And whereas most of them are probably prosaic, there's a few that are real weird.
Yeah, that's true.
The weirdest experience up here, we had made a trail going the other direction along the side of because we were kids. We had nothing else to do,
Yeah.
So we made a trail going the other way, and we had a plank of wood, and we were trying to make a bench out of it, but it wasn't really working. So we had just a little cleared out area. And there were 3 of us there, and the 4th friend was sitting on the bench on the other side. And that, at this point, was quite a distance away.
Mm-hmm.
And we saw him sitting over there. And the tree between us and the graveyard was a decent sized tree. Not like a huge tree, but a solid thing. It would be hard to move.
Mm-hmm.
And it just starts shaking. And you're hearing on the ground, and I'm thinking, buck.
Right.
I'm thinking buck. It hears us. It's hitting its horns because it was a tree a buck could have shaken.
Right.
And my one friend's going, what the hell is that? I'm like, oh, man, I think it's a buck. And I'm thinking, we're going to have to, like, drop down the cliff.
Right.
And so I kind of cautiously walk around down the trail, and as soon as I can see the other side, it just stops. And there's nothing there. So he's like, what is it? I'm like, nothing. And he's like, what do you mean nothing? How is that nothing? And I'm like, dude, there's nothing there. And I walk back, and it starts doing it again. And I'm like, all right. So this time I walk out, I go into the field, and there was still trees right next to us, but still you could see through them.
Mm-hmm.
And there's nothing anywhere. And as soon as I got to a visual point, it stopped.
Wow.
And he's now really losing it. And I come back. He's like, how could it be nothing? And then it starts doing it again. And he's like, what? And then our other friend finally goes, what the hell are you guys talking about? And we just both got quiet, went, you don't see the tree shaking? He's like, the tree's not moving. And we're like, and they're both like, we need to leave now. And at that moment, our friend gets up and he starts walking over toward us from the other bench,
mm-hmm.
and just randomly starts picking up rocks and throwing them right where we're hearing the sound from. And we're like, do you see something over there? He's like, no, why? And we're like, because the tree was shaking and there's stumbling. He's like, yeah, I was throwing rocks. I'm like, yeah, right now you're throwing rocks, but you were sitting when this was happening before. And so then we all left. And we were practical jokers, particularly me.
Yeah.
So my friend Dave, who had experienced all this weird stuff with me, he's the one who didn't see it moving. He thought we were messing with him.
Okay.
So the next day he's like, what was that tree shaking thing? Were you guys serious? And I was like, yes, we were very serious. He's like, oh man, I thought you were effing with me. He's like, what the hell? How come I couldn't see it? And I'm like, I don't know. I kept notes too. I've been keeping notes since 1990, and that's in the notes. And so just from memory, I assumed Dave was the one that saw it. My other friend didn't, because my other friend never saw anything.
Mm-hmm.
But then I'm reading the notes going, I got everything here right, except it was Dave that didn't see it. That's bizarre. And then so we walked home. Well, they walked home, and then I came back up here. I was waiting for a ride home. And I'm like, I have time. I'm going back up there.
Uh-huh.
And there was nothing there. But when I walked down by the Civil War graveyard, it was just, again, Oz effect quiet, not feeling ominous or anything.
Mm-hmm.
But there was something moving through the top of the trees, and big branches were breaking and falling from the tree. And I was like, and there's nothing. I can't see anything. It's making almost a monkey-like squealing noise. And I forgot all about this until I read my notes, and I'm going, holy crap, I remember that now that I've read the note. But and eventually it just kind of stopped, and I went, all right. I guess
Was that like after dark?
It was probably dusk.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah, I have no explanation. And there's other stuff that happened in that same time period,
Mm-hmm.
but it was like at my house and stuff like that.
Right.
So it was like just a whole series of things that all seem interconnected, and those were the two that happened here.
Yeah. Well, for a tree to move like that, even a smaller tree, like the amount of force.
Yeah, it would take something like a buck.
Yeah.
The first time I told the story on Where Did the Road Go, someone said it was Bigfoot. He was invisible. And I went, well, I can't prove there's not an invisible Bigfoot.
Right.
And certainly if there was an invisible Bigfoot, it could have shaken the tree.
True.
But whatever it was, I mean, we could feel the ground shake. That's the thing.
Oh, yeah.
So that's heavy. That's not a person doing something like that.
Right.
And it's not someone throwing rocks.
Yeah. Yeah, a person wouldn't even be able to do that probably.
Right,
I mean,
exactly.
maybe move the tree a little bit, but not to shake it like that.
And again, a large buck easily could have done what we experienced.
Right.
Except there was no large buck.
Right. Unless it was an invisible buck.
Yeah. But I mean, walking away from that, my takeaway immediately was we don't always all experience the same things.
Right.
Because here's my friend Dave freaking out because he's not seeing it.
Yep.
And I've had other experiences like that where I experienced a weird thing with someone and there was a third person who didn't see it.
Right.
And it's like, okay, are they blocking it out? Do we all just kind of interpret things differently? Like, I don't know. It made me question a lot.
Yeah, for sure. And that is something that happens in all kinds of sightings, whether it's UFOs or ghosts, or where some people will see it and others won't.
Mm-hmm. And the thing about this one is it was so visceral.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, the tree was literally shaking. There was thumping on the ground, and he wasn't seeing any of it.
Yeah. That's crazy. Because, I mean, if you're feeling that vibration and the thumping in the ground and the trees moving.
Because, I mean, the other dramatic one that I had where someone else didn't see it is my girlfriend and I were walking through the graveyard in Ithaca.
Yeah.
The Ithaca Cemetery, which we've had a lot of weird stuff there, too. Here, it's always been during the day. We've come up here at night, nothing weird happened. But during the day is when all the weird stuff happened.
Yep.
That one was always at night. So we're walking through there at night, because you can walk through there at night. It's not closed off because there's houses along the side, and it borders College Town and downtown, which makes it a liminal area on top of everything else.
Right.
We're walking around, and suddenly these lights start spinning around us like bugs. And
how big were they?
They were about, just little tiny orbs, but about the size of bugs,
Okay.
But there's a ton of them, and they're swarming around our heads. And they're very clearly not bugs.
Right.
And she looks at me and she's like, "Are you seeing this?" And I'm like, "The lights?" She's like, "Yeah, the lights." And then we look at our friend and we're like, "Are you seeing this?" He's like, "Seeing what?" And we're like, "The lights." He's like, "What lights?" And we were meeting up with some other friends, and just as we heard one of them say something like, "Hey, over here," or whatever, the lights all just darted away suddenly. Yeah. And she looked at me and she's like, "Did you?" I'm like, "Yeah, they just darted away." She's like, "Yeah, in different directions?" I'm like, "Uh-huh."
Yep.
So we were able to coordinate that we were seeing the exact same thing, but yet the other person with us saw nothing.
Wow. And that ties in with other orb sightings. Like a lot of people talk about seeing orbs and reporting that the orbs understand what they're thinking.
Yes. Yeah.
So in that moment when you were looking and paying attention, all of a sudden they disappeared. It sounds like,
Well, they disappeared when we came up to our other friends.
Right. Right.
It's almost like, oh, more people, bye.
Yeah. Yep.
I've seen lots of orbs in that graveyard. That's one of the more common things. That and shadow people.
Yeah.
But that's not Seneca Lake. That's at the end of Cayuga Lake.
Right. But it's right. It's in the same neighborhood, and it's a valid story for this. I'm really interested in that weird thing that you heard up in the trees, because that's, I mean, a tree shaking is weird, yes, but that sounds like it was some kind of
monkey.
Yeah,
exactly. And that's the thing. The other experiences I was having all revolved around monkeys, and so I was like, "What is going on?" And I didn't realize it until I was working on my autobiography, and I'm going, "Oh, there was this, and then this, and then this, and then this," and they're all, they seem to have this monkey theme going through them.
Maybe that's your, I don't know, is that your spirit animal or your spirit something? There's something. No monkeys idea. Are got to be meaningful to you somehow.
I mean, sort of. We used to do, I mean, like my one friend Dave called himself the Almighty Monkey.
Oh, yes.
So there's that.
Okay. Yeah, that's I love those stories, and I've never had any experiences here, but I haven't spent anywhere near as much time as you, I'm sure.
Yeah. And I haven't had anything, well, I had one experience I can't talk about a couple of years ago just because it's very personal.
Okay.
That's the only recent experience I had, and it was something very subtle but also very meaningful type of thing.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. And that was here too?
Yeah. That was here at night. That's the only one I've had at night, actually.
Ah, okay.
Because I just had I had worked on a computer customer down the road, and as I was coming back, it was almost midnight, and I said, "It's nice. I'm going to walk up there."
Yeah.
And then, a couple of weird things happened, and I was like, "Cool. All right."
Yeah, this place must be really cool at night. Very dark.
Oh, it was.
There
was no
light
moon.
pollution
It was
or anything
black.
around.
I tried to take pictures on night shot and just got like vague outlines of the trees.
Uh-huh. Okay, so that was part one of my conversation with Seriah at the Willard Cemetery. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you all enjoyed it as much as I did. And if you want to learn more about Seriah and his show, Where Did the Road Go?, his podcast, and everything else, go to wheredidtheroadgo.com. You'll find his link tree there, and that'll bring you to everything, all the different projects that he works on. He's a real interesting guy. He's been at this for years, and check out everything that he does. And again, thank you so much for listening, for all your comments and messages and feedback. I really, truly appreciate it. And again, if you want to get a hold of me, send an email to podcast@SenecaLakeMysteries.com, or you can call and leave a voicemail, 607-307-1167. So I'll talk to you next time.